ideals and the principles that made the United States of America the greatest force for good in the history of the world. That is our message. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Lorraine. Thank you, Frank. Just another example of what ordinary Americans do on a daily basis. And guess what? We're not a bunch of wackos. We're not a bunch of radicals. It's interesting to me that when you sometimes look around at the media and you see, and no offense to my friends in the media, I've been there for 20 years. I have a lot of faith in media. I have a lot of faith in my fellow journalists. But the ones that go out there and write the editorials rather than tell the story, they're not journalists. There are some people who are the professionals that Frank referenced. Annemarie McAvoy, the lady you see standing next to me, and if you're listening, you'll hear her in a moment, has been a federal prosecutor. She has been in-house at Morgan Stanley, at Citigroup. She knows the inner workings of financial institutions and regulations. She helped write the regulations. Why is it important that I introduce her this way? Because instead of just having candidates and politicians and stump speeches, you won't get that here tonight. What you will get tonight across this country, on Sirius, on XM, online at Sirius.com, and around the world, is the truth from the people who have been there, who can give you perspective, and that is the most important thing, the truth and perspective. So Annemarie McAvoy, I'm really glad you could join us tonight. Take it away.
Thank you so much, David. And I want to tell all of you, David Webb and Kellen Gaida have put so much work into this, and they need a big round of applause to thank them for what they did for us today. And when I look out there at all of you who've been good enough to come out and spend your time and try to get your voices heard today, I say to myself, this is what America is all about. Being able to get up and speak up for what we think is right. We don't have to just take what is given to us. We have a right to stand up and be heard. And that's what we are all doing here tonight. We're talking about issues, and we're talking about trying to make changes to make it a better America, not to tear us apart. Now, when we look at what our government is doing these days, one of the things that for me is the most upsetting is to see how the government is taking over different areas of our private sector. That has never been done before. I teach law at Fordham Law School, and it has never ever been done like this before. You look at our car companies. We now have car companies essentially run by the United States government. We've had banks. That's right. And who's the company doing best as far as the car companies? Ford. The one that's still private. The one the government hasn't been able to touch. That's the one that's doing the best. And that's what we should be doing, having them be free to do what they need to do. We've had health care now being taken over by the government. 15,000 new IRS agents are being hired to implement health care. I don't know about you guys, but I'd rather have those wonderful doctors back there in their white coats help me make my medical decisions, not the government. And then, of course, we have the banks. But beyond the banks, we have other takeovers going on. Slipped into the health care bill, and with that passage came the student loan takeover by the government. If you're a student and you want a loan, you've got to go to the government now. You don't have an option. And there are more ramifications to this than you might think. For instance, medical students who want to become our new doctors, they'll have to give about 6 years to the government when they graduate. They will have to work wherever the government tells them to work. If they are native New Yorkers and they have family in New York, they want to stay in New York, that doesn't matter. If they're sent to the bayous of Louisiana to work, that's where they have to work, wherever the government sends them. And they will be paid whatever the government pays them. and they will specialize in whatever the government tells them to specialize in. This is not the American way. And this does not foster a feeling of working hard and trying to become professionals such as doctors. I certainly wouldn't want my law students to have to go through being told what they're going to do by the government. And then there's another bill that's pending right now, the financial reform bill. And buried in that bill is a provision that allows the government to take over large, healthy, profitable companies that have taken no government fund. These companies can be taken over if the Treasury Secretary decides that they pose a systemic risk to financial stability. What does that mean? Who knows? Whatever the Treasury Secretary decides is a company that's too big or that they don't think is good for the whole system, they can take it over and they can put it out of business. Now, what happens to the people who work for that company? What happens to the shareholders of that company? The people who have pensions from that company? Who is the government to come in and take over a profitable company in our America? Now, we have to work to try to keep the America that we all grew up with. And right now, it's more important than ever that every individual work to do that. And there are ways that you can. The first thing and the most obvious is every one of us has to go out and vote. But don't just vote. Research who the candidates are. Research what their positions are. Look at how honest you believe they are. What are the issues that are important to you and how will they vote on them? Make sure that you are educated and then educate your friends, educate your families. Make sure they understand the issues, make sure they understand who's running, and make sure they go out and they cast their vote. We can turn things around. We can hopefully maybe have these programs not be funded so that even though they're passed, they can't really go into effect. And we can potentially repeal the programs that have been put into place. But we can't do that unless the right candidates get elected. So we have to all go out and exercise our right to vote as Americans. But I want to thank all of you for coming here tonight, and I want to thank you for working hard and being out there and raising your voices with us tonight. America, remember, is a wonderful place, and we want to keep it that way. Let's all work together to do that. Thank you.
Annemarie McAvoy, thank you. Let's hear it for her. She's been inside the belly of the beast.